So, good afternoon, everybody. We are conducting session 3, and the topic for today is petrochemicals driving sustainable growth. What we are discussing is about the growth opportunities, the trends, the strategic imperatives, impact of draft PCPIR, and sustainable growth. And let me introduce you to all my panelists. They are in different parts of the country. We have Ms. Sanchita Banerjee, Executive Director, Special Projects, Oil India Limited. She has an extensive work experience of 35 years with Oil India Limited. Having joined Oil India in 1985, she started her journey at a grassroots level and worked on a number of highly successful projects. So, welcome, Madam, on this petrochemical session. We have Mr. B. Narayan. He is the Group President, Procurement and Projects, Reliance Industries Limited. Having joined Reliance Industries in 1979, Mr. Narayan has worked with responsibilities for project management and procurement of capital equipment for polyester, petrochemicals, refinery, gasification, and downstream projects. He is also the Chief Procurement Officer and sponsor for procurement of equipments and materials. Our third speaker is Mr. Subiksh Jaina. He is the Executive Director, INC, Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited. Mr. Jaina comes with over 34 years of experience and has been handling petrochemical marketing ever since BPCL entered into petrochemical space. He has been part of various marketing activities, including retail, LPG, and institutional business. Our fourth speaker is Mr. Saugata Chaudhary. He is the Head Petrochemicals Marketing, Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited. Mr. Chaudhary is an experienced professional who has spent 20 plus years of experience in petrochemicals industry and occupied several positions in various leading organizations. He has extensively traveled across Asia, Europe, and US and gained deep understanding and insight of petrochemicals market dynamics. Our last speaker is Mr. Manoj Jha. He is GM, Petchem Strategy, Indian Oil Corporation Limited. Mr. Jha is well known in the petrochemical industry and has been working closely with various government and industry bodies towards growth of petrochemicals landscape of the country. With more than 26 years of experience in hydrocarbon and petrochemicals field, Mr. Jha has also been actively involved in the development of petrochemical perspective plan at the national level. And let me also introduce you to our moderator, Mr. Sudeep Maheshwari, partner, Kearney India. Mr. Maheshwari co-leads chemical practice for Kearney in India. He has more than 15 years of experience across consulting, industry, and academia. Maheshwari started his Kearney journey in United States, where he worked with several global chemical majors. And then for last 6 years, he has been back in India and has grown the chemicals practice for Kearney in India. So, without wasting any time, with such illustrious stalwarts from the petrochemical industry in today's session, I would request Mr. Sudeep Maheshwari to please start the discussion. So over to Mr. Sudeep Maheshwari.
Thank you, Praveen. First of all, I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Yeah, we can hear you properly.
Great. Okay. Thanks a lot, Praveen, for the opportunity, and really privileged to be hosting this panel discussion with my fellow panelists. Today, what we'll do is we'll cover some of the relevant areas around petrochemicals, especially focusing on India. So you're talking a little bit about what's the growth opportunity and how is it likely to change. Talking about what are some of the pertinent evolution that the sector will see and what are the strategic imperatives around that. We'll also touch upon sustainability, circularity, which is increasingly becoming important in the age and world we live today. And last but not the least, we'll touch upon the regulatory environment in India. But before we get in...
And Sudeep, just wanted to tell you, if there are any questions, I will WhatsApp you those questions, or given a chance, if you feel free, I can also ask those questions to you, so that the flow is get maintained.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. So before we get into the questions with our fellow panelists, let me set the context on petrochemicals. A lot of audience would already know it's one of the rising stars in India. I mean, especially in the last decade or so, we have consistently grown at 7 to 10%. What's even more interesting and more exciting is this journey is likely to continue. I mean, we as a nation today are significantly deficit in petrochemicals. With the absence of sufficient capacity that is likely to grow, this is where a lot of excitement comes. In fact, if we look the rate at which we'll grow, we almost need a world scale cracker every year to ensure that our imports don't shoot up. There are a few other important characteristics when it comes to petrochemicals. There are certain chains where we have really doubled down and have grown, mainly around plastics, polymers, be it polyethylene, polypropylene, and some. But there are chains where we are continuing to be import dependent, especially around the benzene downstream, for example, styrene, or around more complex chemistries, for example, glycols and the polyols and polyurethanes. There have been a lot of push by the government. PCPIR policy was conceptualized. It has taken off in bits and pieces. We have Dahej, which has done well, but some of the other PCPIRs are still to kind of take off. So, I mean, long story short, demand is very, very robust. Supply side, we are seeing a lot of new announcements, and there's room for more. Policy-wise, there have been some success and some not. And really, what's driving that is what the key questions we have in mind is how this will look like going forward, what things will change. So with that, let me first focus on the growth opportunity in petrochemicals. If I can invite Saugata. And Saugata, my first question to you is, we are just recovering from COVID. How did you see petrochemical industry in last year or so? And how do you see it in short term, in next year or so? Do we see the recovery is quick, fast, or we are still reading through the experiences of COVID? So Saugata, over to you.
Thank you, Sudeep, and good afternoon all. Yes, in fact, as you all know that year 2020 witnessed an unprecedented global economic turmoil and has been facing greater uncertainty that and any time in living memories. The repercussions of the coronavirus pandemic and the lockdowns introduced to curb it was felt by almost all sectors across the globe, since demand is so very closely linked to the economic performance. It is in its unstoppable trajectory from Asia to Europe, right on to the Americas. The pandemic has disrupted traditional demand across all sectors. Petrochemicals industries is no different either, which was also hit by pandemic. Refineries across the globe, in India as well, were grappling to cope up with these demand distractions due to the lockdown, and as a result, the operating rate of the refineries remained extremely low. However, amidst these demand disruptions and the margin erosions, overall petrochemicals market has survived the pandemic hit recessions relatively unscarred. Petrochemicals markets, as I see that, it observe varied dynamics depending on the value chains and the end market. For example, demand of polyethylene has been more resilient given to its ties to non-durable consumer goods, for example, food packagings and all. However, constructions, consumer durables, automobile segments dented polyethylene demand. If you look into this polypropylene, the polypropylene demand bucks the odds due to the need of non-woven fabrics, which was used for the masks, gowns, and other medical applications, as well as takeaway food containers, as restaurants were mostly closed and they were struggling to stay afloat during shutdowns by offering more pickups and deliveries. However, that push was not really enough not enough to overcome the demand distractions from automotive and home appliance segments. One very important thing has been witnessed during this pandemic is that the cash cost, the crash in the crude oil prices really changed the traditional ethylene cost curve to the greatest extent. As you all know that, customarily the ethane-based crackers has been enjoying huge cost advantage compared to naphtha-based crackers. or even compared to the mixed feed crackers. However, the age of the laters have sharpened owing to the decline in the crude oil and consequently naphtha and LPG prices. What happened? Eventually, naphtha and LPG based crackers were benefited by lower crude oil price scenarios. And interestingly, as majority of Indian petrochemical plants are naphtha based, they were greatly benefited as conversion margins of the ethylene cracker had improved drastically. Although prices of PE and PP had drastically reduced, there was a significant improvement observed in spreads between the building blocks and the feedstock due to the decline in the prices of the feedstock. Touch upon the aromatics, the story is a bit different that we observed. Aromatics, for example, benzene, toluene, and xylenes. The demand has been bearish in India as well as worldwide, causing aromatic prices tumbling and the margins of the various aromatics to the naphtha, which is the major feedstock of aromatics, went to their lowest ever level. In the absence of the global demand, most of the sellers worldwide had to look to China because China is the largest consumer of the aromatics. When they were negotiating the overflowing tankages at their territories. Aromatics market worldwide faced immense pressures as the pandemic decimated demand from the gasoline segments, because as you know that, a lot of aromatics are used in the, or goes in the gasoline pool for the gasoline blending. So petrochemical plants also we observed across the globe reduce their operating rate, or to some of them idled, or try to balance out the erosion of the downstream resin consumptions caused by this pandemic. Even we have observed that some plants preponed their plant maintenance downs to negotiate the soft demands. The situation started improving and the gradually demand started recovering November 2020 onwards, and everything seemed to be coming to normalcy pretty quickly. But then North American winter storm hit in February and another storm hit August, which drastically changed the supply situations in US. And that effect was felt by the rest of the world, including India. After that, another issue, the issues of the container availability and the escalation of the freight added more ooze to the industry. Soaring freight and the dreadful shortage of containers make the global trade flow upside down. As a result, the trade becomes more regionalized. Going forward, I see not much of difference, or it will be more or less similar until end of 2021 as far as container shortage issues is concerned, or it may be stretch to Q1 2022. But from the demand side, I'm more bullish, and I can clearly hear the stride of recovery with more and more ease of lockdown restrictions. Thank you. That's all I just wanted to tell you, Sudhir.
Thank you, Saugata. Really appreciate your comprehensive view. Maybe now let me go a little bit across. Mr. Narayan, you represent one of the largest petrochemical producer in India. The question to you is, how do you see this outlook, especially 5 to 10 years, over next 5 to 10 years? And two questions I would like you to address. A, any headwinds, tailwinds, and will the growth nature change compared to the past? Will we finally see some of the new chains and new derivatives being produced into India?
Yeah, well, let me set the context right. First of all, let's see whether India is poised to be one of the global big league players at all in petrochemicals. Do we have the appetite? Looking at the Indian steel industry, we are number 2 with 110 million tons. Cement, again, number 2, 300 million tons. And refining capacity, we have 250 million tons. And I think number 4 or something. And so we are a big league player, first of all. So it's time, I believe, is actually to get to the big league in petrochemical side. And the setting is pretty good today, because our consumption is of the order of about, demand is of the order of about 40 million tons, as compared to the world demand of 350 to 400 million tons. And nearly 40% we import. So we make about 25 million tons and balance is imported. So there's a straight case for us to build plants, invest, and make up that deficit, number 1. Number 2, with all the development that had taken place over the past year and a half, all countries around the world are looking to an alternative to China. And so that is another area where India has an opportunity to exploit the situation. I'm sure multinationals are looking to India to potential, as a potential destination to come and invest. So these are the opportunities, and we should not miss it. And as we look at the imports, what are the main items we're importing? Today we see it's actually a pity. The poor man's polymer, PVC, we are 17th in the world producer, and we have 2 million tons of PVC being imported into the country. And of course, so far, having said that, because PVC manufacture involves a large amount of power requirement, and so long the electricity power is very expensive for us, and when you invest in PVC, you need to look at the entire chain from chlorine to EDC to VCM to PVC. And fortunately, today, the renewable energy, solar and wind energy cost has come down comparable to the fossil energy. And it's an opportunity for us to invest in that area. That's one, straightforward case. We import 700,000 tons of styrene, and nobody is making styrene. A great opportunity. In fact, our company had been talking and thinking, and in fact, at one time we had gone ahead and signed the license agreement even. And unfortunately, the situation changed, and the styrene price is like a yo-yo, moves with the benzene, and sometimes pretty unpredictable. So I think this is a time for us to invest in that area as well. So there's acetic acid. We're importing almost nearly 1 million tons, 900,000 tons a year. And acetic acid derivatives have great demand. You have acetic anhydride, acetates, monochloride acetic acid, and all of that. And our growth areas in the country today, as we can see, obviously everywhere, we have in the pharmaceutical area, agrochemicals area, and we have in water treatment, water chemicals area, we have some specialty chemicals. All of these areas are great potential for us to grow, and we need to support these industry growths. And next decade is going to be extremely different because of the potential onset of electric vehicles. Electrical vehicles means you have to get into maybe green energy, green power, and less of gasoline and diesel. So you have the refining capacity, which is a base investment. And our job is actually to focus on more chemical production, more petrochemical productions. We need to use these assets, maybe convert this. Today, the refineries produce what? Maybe 12 to 15% of petrochemicals from of the feed, and we have to target to about 50 to 60%, and that is our challenge, and that is where the new refineries are going to come up with very different configurations, we believe. And we have, for example, I mentioned about CO1 chemicals, the entire chain. So once we have syngas, and in Reliance, we have a large capacity of gasification of petcoke and coal to make syngas, and that is the building block for making CO and further on methanol or acetic acid and acetates and anhydrides and all of those. So and naturally, with the capacity increase, and efficiency is something which we have to focus on, and every company today is working on that area, and cost cutting and not cost cutting, I should say cost reduction is the focus area, and sustainability of operation. And there is going to be a tremendous pressure on us for the environmental protection. So our operations have to more and more depend on renewable energy rather than fossil energy if we have to be sustainable in that area. So it's not just investing, but I'm sure investment-wise, we have so many opportunities. Polyester area, we have been always leading in the world, and I think number 1 or 2, always we have been switching over between China and us, and And so you have to produce PTA and then paraxylene. And as you know, my previous speaker said, we are looking for paraxylene or aromatics in China. But why not? We need to invest in India to make more paraxylene to sustain PTA and polyester business. And that is our company is definitely, we are looking to investing on a 3 million tons PTA plant, and also maybe supporting the PTA production through additional investment on paraxylene as well. So these are some of the areas, and I'm sure as you know, C4 chemicals also there are opportunities, but the only difference, if going forward, instead of looking forward to conventional way of producing butadiene, which is the main component of C4 stream, by either a cracking, steam cracker or the FCC cracker, I think future it will be the dehydrogenation process of, on purpose dehydrogenation of butene, and maybe even ethylene tomorrow, dehydrogenation of ethane is going to be, because if you are using your feedstock into the ethylene cracker or conventional cracker, 20% of that is used up as a fuel or emission. And then particularly looking at C4 stream, almost about only 6% of it is produced as butadiene and C4 stream. So it is very disproportionate from the standpoint of, so we have to look for alternative routes. Now you are asking, what is the hurdle? Because future, it's going to be the decarbonization technology is a key. So today it is not fully developed, and so that will be probably the headwind. As far as the tailwind is concerned, the demand is a great tailwind, and we have no problem about demand itself. It's a huge demand. It's a consumption base as compared to many other countries, and then we don't have to probably depend too much on the crude oil, imported crude oil, going forward. And so if we are depending on renewable energy, our dependence on fossil fuel is going to be reduced.
Thank you, Mr. Nair. Appreciate your views. Let me switch gears a little bit. Few of the things that we often talk about, pretty much gets talked about in all the petrochemical forums, is what have been really the headwinds and which has prevented the growth of production in India, despite being robust demand. 2-3 things come out when we talk to some of our clients who are operating in this sector. Especially if you look from the participation of global players, still participation is limited in India. I would say a lot of global majors have set up their production capacities for petrochemicals in China, but in India, it's still limited. We have started seeing some signs of that now with few announcements like BASF did with Adani, ADNOC is thinking, the Ratnagiri refinery, which everyone talks about. The second thing which often gets cited, and this is especially true for the derivatives, is around sharing of the building blocks, be it ethylene, propylene, which are traditionally difficult to transport across the borders. And the third thing is around the technology and access. So this set of question, my theme is around these 2-3 things. Let me first go to Ms. Sanchita. Your view on this entire heightened interest of global petchem majors recently, the announcement we have seen. Is this what's driving that, and is it here to stay, or this will be 1 or 2 isolated announcements, but we don't see more interest going forward? What's your take? What's your view on this thing? You are on mute, Ms. Sanchita.
Good afternoon, everybody. Already, my previous speakers as well as Sudeep has already explained more or less what is our normal scenario for the petrochemical industry. For the joint venture, generally when the foreign investor will come to India, they want few of the things which will be beneficial to them. That is the distribution marketing setup, financial resource, then the contract, then the strategy for entering this our market, because here the commercial as well as the contracts are high, and also they require lower cost and the lower resource commitment for entering our market. So in this context, we can tell you that India is emerging as an attractive and durable investment destination, because if you can see by 2025, this our projection is we will achieve $300 billion. So because already Shudip has already told us that the average of 7% annual growth of GDP in the last 20 years we are having. But if you see the major economics, what they're telling in India, in 2023, the real GDP growth will be 7.6%. In comparison to the world, it will be 3.8%. In 2025, it will be 7.2%. In comparison to this world, it will be 3.5%. So from this GDP growth, we can find out that now the whatever we are having, our policy, PCPIR and government initiative, as well as our market, domestic market, everywhere we are having a very high demanding position. So what we can do it, this is the area where what Mr. B. Narayan was telling, that we are importing the feedstock. It's correct. We are importing the feedstock nowadays because we are mainly the fuel petroleum. We are producing petrol from this crude oil to the petrol, gasoline, LPG, diesel, and other things. So when we are on one way, we are telling that we want to have the carbon free or greenhouse emission should be less. So what we can do it, we can, for the automobile side, we can go for these things, renewable energy side, and from this crude oil, naphtha, that is the feedstock, naphtha and the natural gas, we can go for this, the petroleum, petrochemical feedstock. So that will be easier. Then the domestic market will be sufficient. Our import duty will be less. Now, if the foreign investor is coming, they're also getting on lower cost, it will be there for their feedstock purchasing. Now, what are the things we are getting here in India nowadays? That is the FDIs, easy of doing business, innovation, infrastructure, logistic, and corporate income tax, which has already reviewed, because the 22% for existing companies, now for the new companies, it is coming down to 15% for the new manufacturing companies. Now, strong consumer market with a large working population, and India's working age people will increase from 0.86 billion in 2015 it was, and in 2030 it will be 1.03 billion. And the average median age shall be 37.3 years by 2050. So that is the main working. If you can go for the AI and other automation also, but you require the skilled manpower. So that you can get it from India. And what are the other factors we are getting for competitive market? The politically stable with good political and trade relationship, as well as development 5 industrial corridors, but we have already got it for integrated industrial development, and 3,382 industrial parks spread across 0.475 million hectare land. As well as Make in India, that is the main thing. What we have seen now, since 2014 to 2020, we have already in FDI, how much we have spent, that is the USD 357 billion. And another new scheme, that is a PLI, for total 12 sectors, where we can get it attractive incentives and cashback benefits. Industrial licensing also, we are having a modernized state, because the industrial licensing has been abolished for most subsectors. Only some hazardous chemicals, it is still there. Now, skill development program, sector-specific skill development program is going on all over India. So that your whatever the manpower is required, you can get it very good manpower who are technologically sound, and the competitive labor wages will be 62 to 58 USD per month.
Got it. Maybe Mr. Sanjit, in the interest of time, if you can conclude in 30 seconds so that we have time for.
Okay. So what we have seen, that is the expected growth in this our India. It is very good, and you know that we can get that expand profit margin also, digital analytical capabilities, as well as we can go for our main thing is that, you know, what you can do it, we can easily go for this petroleum refinery to the petrochemicals integration, where we can get the Indian chemical industry already employs more than 2 million people, and the more other people also, unemployed people, they can join here, because we have seen that growth is very high. Now, since 2000, in 1970, we have started the petrochemical industry, and now we are in 2008. It was a little bit, setback because of the surge of this crude oil price. But now we are in the very good state, because we are already going for this. Our CGR is very good nowadays, because nowadays we are what we are thinking 75% feedstock to new petrochemical projects are integrated. That is the main thing what I wanted to highlight, because your feedstock is very dangerous, because you are not getting the feedstock properly. So that is why if you go for the integrated feedstock, I think that will solve the problem. And our domestic refineries, they can get the good feedstock in 2030, 35 million tons. So that is the way. If we can go for this per capita, the consumption of the plastics, then definitely our market will be very high.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjit. Let me move on. Next question to you, Mr. Jainas. One of the another roadblock we see is access to technology. In fact, in several cases, technology or a feedstock combination of both. In several cases, for example, polyols, acrylates, styrene, acetic acid, a combination of one of those. Some of the things which Mr. Narayan pointed out, that has been the factor. I know BPCL has, recently invested in polyols, and you're overcoming. A broader question to you, what has been roadblocks in getting these technologies, and how do you see, how will India solve this problem going forward, so some of that chains can also develop indigenously?
Thank you, Sudeep. Good afternoon to all of you. See, most of the, your questions have been answered in a different way by many of the speakers, but still I would like to repeat some of the points. See, when a company plans its foray into propylene derivative petrochemicals, the immediate question that comes to the mind of strategy group is, should we go commodity way, like polypropylene, or niche way for products like acrylates and polyols? So niche sounds very lucrative from commercial point of view. But to be very honest, not many have really ventured into it. The roadblocks which are immediately experienced may be categorized under 3 headings. One is accessibility to the highly guarded technology, number 1. Number 2 is feedstock availability. And number 3 is complexity of marketing. I will briefly touch upon all these factors. First, let me take on the technology part. As you rightly said, we had, I will not call it a bad experience, but we had some experience. And based on our experience, what we found, niche petrochemical technologies are not readily available, and these are very closely held. These technologies are developed in-house by the manufacturing industries based upon their decades of R&D, pilot plant testing, and continuous in-plant improvements based on their operational experiences. So these technologies are developed specific to cater and customize the specific requirements of customers of different application segments. Therefore, niche petrochemicals, you will find, are often restricted to limited manufacturers. the only easy way to avail this guarded technology is to go for joint venture with the multinational companies. But most JV attempts failed due to one primary reason, that is differences in stakes of two partnering companies. The technology partner tend to demand joint venture arrangements heavily tilted in their favor, which is not acceptable to the other party. In addition to this, multinationals have adopted a careful attitude over the years towards investing in India. This is based on a widely shared perception amongst foreign players that even once a project is approved, there can be many obstacles. But let me tell you at the same time that in recent times, this perception has started melting. This is first point. Second obstacle, what we feel is the availability of feedstock. See, India's petrochemicals capacity mostly continues to be refinery integrated. And that is due to limited feedstock availability. As of now, if you see, India has only one major standalone naphtha cracker, that is Haldia Petrochemicals. Whereas in Middle East and US, you will find where you find abundant gas supply, that has led to a significant contribution from standalone petrochemical assets, which is not available in India. And additionally, India's petrochemical players have mostly evolved their portfolios from refinery setups. This has been also discussed earlier. Motive is to drive value addition and higher net realization, because refinery integration with petrochemicals provides feedstock cost benefit and competitiveness. The focus has been only on basic commodity chemicals where technology licenses are readily available. As a result, capacities have been limited for downstream niche derivatives. So that is why you will not find many industries coming up with product like acrylates or polyols. Third major hurdle that what we are experiencing is complexity of marketing. See, market of products like polyol and acrylates are very much fragmented. Most are small and medium-sized enterprises. We call them SMEs, and they have their presence across the country. This necessitates a complex, multi-layered marketing setup, even for small volumes. This results into increase in marketing and logistic cost. Efficiency of India's supply chain management system, particularly for niche petrochemicals, is very weak. When I say weak, this is as compared to Middle East and Singapore. See, the SMEs who produce finished product from niche petrochemicals even require technological, they also need technical support, technical handholding. And to serve these customers, manufacturers must have strong R&D and PRDC setup, particularly for product like polyols. It is also required to build strong in-house technical capabilities. This is, I'm talking from manufacturer point of view. So all these 3 points, the complexity of marketing, the availability of feedstock, that constraint, and third, heavily guarded technology. All the 3 are, they act as major headwinds. And for all these reasons, most of the major petrochemical players are reluctant to enter into niche petrochemical market. But at the same time, I would say this is changing. As I mentioned earlier, looking at the demand growth in the country for such products, licensors are now coming forward to license the technology, and also they are keen to enter into JV. And as Madam has already talked about PCPIR, so the thrust on PCPIR by the government will definitely motivate both the producers as well as SMEs to come forward for investments.
Got it. Got it. One last question in this category, and maybe quick view from Mr. Manoj and Mr. Saugata. Given Mr. Manoj, you have existing assets, and Mr. Saugata, you have an upcoming asset. We'll try and keep it crisp because we are a little bit running late. But the question is, this entire story about sharing ethylene, propylene, and other building blocks with the downstream guys who can come up with more niche petrochemicals and derivatives. What's your view on it? Do you see that changing going forward? Mr. Manoj, first to you, please.
Thank you, Sudeep, and good afternoon to all. I'll definitely try to keep the time constraint in mind. So to start with, the availability of building blocks is one of the foremost challenges for petrochemical industry, and is more nuanced than what it actually seems. Actually, all these streams need separate treatment and analysis, and they demand complete foray of activities to actually come to the conclusion of all these chains. For example, in India, we are net exporters of benzene and butadiene, while being net deficit on its downstream side. Of course, C1 to C3 chains starting from methanol, ethylene, propylene, they have been projected to be net deficit over the longer horizon. For example, ethylene is projected to be deficit by around 3 to 4 million tons between 2025 and 2030, whereas propylene is, in the longer run by 2040, we are expecting around 12 to 15 million tons of deficit in ethylene. And in propylene, it is roughly around 6 million tons by 2040. So, it is the most important issue to be addressed for the industry. There are certain steps which can be taken to mitigate the problem. A few of them, what I have thought of is that we can maximize the utilization of existing naphtha by way of cooling, as well as by release of naphtha from fuel applications to replacement of natural gas. Currently, around 7 to 8 million tons of naphtha is which is scattered across the country is being exported. So there is a need to actually club this naphtha together, and by that, as well as replace the refinery fuels with the naphtha, refinery fuels with the natural gas, and that released naphtha, along with the naphtha which is exported, can be clubbed together to set up approximately 3 world-size crackers. Another option could be that we can set up petcoke-based olefin production. Indian refineries are expected to have some surplus of petcoke to the tune of around 8 million metric tons, after accounting for whatever the gasification projects which are being thought of, and as well as the usage in the boilers, etc., whatever is being thought of. Around 8 million tons is expected to be surplus in the country. And olefin plants based on C2O or this C2M routes can be thought of. Feedstock is a big constraint in the country, and we have to gear up to import feedstocks like gas and condensates. Infrastructure is a big problem for the usage of these feedstocks, and maybe government can help by providing tax and other incentives for setting up of these gas and condensate import infrastructure for the purpose. As an alternate to feedstock import, intermediates can be imported for production of finished products in India. Facilities can be set up in feedstock advantaged countries where intermediates can be made, and those intermediates can be brought back to India for final products production. We have definitely to look deep into the deeper refinery integration, and olefin recovery in refineries can be enhanced through deep catalytic cracking and cracking of refinery off gases, as well as further heavier streams. Newer technologies, of course, there is a lot of talk going over on that. Technologies like crude to chemicals, carbon dioxide to methanol, etc., they have to be adopted in a much faster manner. As far as your question on building block sharing goes, you would appreciate that a petrochemical complex in today's time, it costs anywhere between $5 to $7 billion. And the financial viability of these complexes are majorly based on the financial attractiveness of its downstream units. So the planning and allocation of feedstock for sharing has to be necessarily factored in at the design and financial due diligence stage, along with the suitable provisions and safeguards to be built in as a take or pay contracts. So these kind of activities are executed. I think the feedstock sharing can also work out in the future. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you, Manoj. Saugata, your views on
so I'll just quickly add to what my previous panelist mentioned. Yes, in fact, if you look into these, the globally almost 65% of ethylene is converted to polyethylene. Then it's followed by MEG, which is 24%, and then styrene, etc., is around 10-11% together. For polypropylene situations, propylene situations is also not very different, because around 70% propylene is converted to polypropylene. And then the next one is only 6%, let's say, propylene oxides and ACN. As you mentioned previously, that merchandise sales of ethylene and propylene is associated with lots of logistical challenges. Therefore, it's natural trend for any new projects to lock up their ethylene and propylene building block into P and PP. It is difficult for them to really keep those ethylene and propylene open for merchandise sales unless there is a surety of downstream investments at the time of project inception itself. Problem actually lies there. However, I see there is a change happening in India with investment in PDH plant, that's propane dehydrogenation plant in India, which is relatively less capital intensive, and propylene coming out of which can be used in other downstream derivatives other than polypropylene. Apart from ethylene and propylene, I see there are availability of other building blocks, for example, butadiene, benzene, or even toluene. These important building blocks are available from the new assets which are going to come or going to be operational in next 1 to 3 years time. So overall, I feel that the sharing of building blocks from upcoming petrochemical complexes will be intensified in years to come. Thank you. That's what I just wanted to add on.
Thank you, Swagata. Really appreciate crisp response and keeping us on time. Moving gears a little bit, sustainability, circularity, net zero, these are very, very important. It's no longer a buzzword, I would say. I mean, we are dealing with a real problem here if the global temperature rises by 2 degrees Celsius. As petrochemical sector, we are one of the big energy intensive production units. We have a lot of carbon footprint. My first question to you, Mr. Narayan, is net zero possible for India, especially for petrochemical sector in India? And how do you see it? What all things will need to fall in place for us to go anywhere near to that?
That question of is it possible should not be there. It is essential. We cannot live without it. It is not an option. You know, just in the context, this planet can not more than 500 billion tons of carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
It's got to reach a limit of 1.5 degrees centigrade warming. It can take up only up to 2,500 billion tons. We already have filled it up with 2,000 billion tons. And we are actually adding on at the rate of 40 billion tons a year at the current rate. So the deadline date is actually 2031. And then you reach 1.5 degrees centigrade of global warming, and you are going to be against unknown incidents in natural phenomena. So like hurricanes, floods, monsoon, extended monsoon, and summers are going to be hotter, winters are going to be chillier, and all of that. You know, the polar caps have reached the lowest in years. And if you take the base of 1900, actually in the last 200 years, we have put this 2 trillion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. There is no way. So the only way, if at all we want to get into it, so there are two ways. Either you remove the carbon dioxide you've already put in the atmosphere, remove it, or you reduce putting fresh carbon dioxide. Removing is, today there is no technology because it is only a 400 ppm content in the air. And it's probably in 2050, we may have a technology to remove that carbon dioxide because it will be imperative. There may not be any other option but to do that. So the only way out is actually to reduce emitting carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases. But among the greenhouse gases, the biggest culprit is carbon dioxide. You know, it has got a life of 500 years. You can't get rid of carbon dioxide once it is in the atmosphere for 500 years, as compared to methane, which actually has a life of 20 years. And so then nitrous oxide, etc. So, and the fluorocarbons. But carbon dioxide is a one. And unfortunately, today's technology is if you have to capture carbon dioxide, it costs about $50 a ton. Sequestering is about $400 a ton. And then do we have a technology to use that carbon dioxide? A lot of people are working on it. Yeah, I'm not talking about small quantity of carbon dioxide to make urea, blah. We are talking about billions of tons of carbon dioxide. You know, the way we have been putting this current, I said current rate of putting carbon dioxide is 40 billion tons a year. 10 years ago, it was at the rate of 30 billion tons a year. 20 years ago, it was 20 billion tons a year. So how we have been, and instead of reducing it, we have been increasing, putting it. So there is no option but to. But how do we do it? So the only way is go green, nothing else. Because I understand the international banks have now started introducing what are scoring systems called environmental societal governance score. And you go to them with the coal-fired power plant proposal, no funds. And so you need to go with renewable energy power generation if you want to have funds. And that is, again, those power plants, if you have to run on it, it has to be a solar or wind. And that solar and wind has to be used for your operation of petrochemicals or whatever plant you want to have. So like our chairman had in the last AGM announced that we have pledged by 2035, we will be a net zero company. And so it is a very, very, very strong pledge, a strong announcement. It's a very big challenge. Today, as you can see, even Indian position, with all the major OECD countries, including Germany, Japan, etc., have announced and they've pledged that by 2050, they will achieve net zero status. And China, of all the countries, 2060, that's what they've announced. And it is pity and ironical that the second largest polluter, USA, walked off the Paris Accord last year. And anyway, so India, and I know compared to that, India still has not pledged. I'm sure next month, Glasgow summit, India will be under pressure to announce some pledge. I think. And very fact that the government has, announced there is a 450 gigawatt power announcement, solar and renewable power, and then there's also a green energy mission, etc. These are all good things, and if we are able to achieve this, and we should be, I do not. Your question was, is it possible? It has to be made possible. So I do not, and I, if you see the context, the entire transportation system today, biggest polluter is a fossil fuel-based power plants. I think almost 80%. And then you have the transportation sector. So I understand the entire transportation sector can be electrified with the solar power. You need only 15% of the power generation.
I agree, Mr. Narayan, but what about petrochemicals? In petrochemicals, what we can really do?
No, I tell you, petrochemicals straight. Number one is your manufacturing facilities don't use fossil-based fuel. And you use as much as possible, the energy has to be solar energy. That is our motto. And, that is one of the I would say, the headwind, because for the decarbonization, you're talking about, we have announced making from sand, silica to polysilicon, wafer, the cells, the modules, the batteries, and the green electrolyzer and green hydrogen, fuel cells. None of these have today technologies available. So we have to bring in technologies from outside. We have to bring in probably the JV partners and all of that. So this is a challenge, and we have to do. This is one area. Second area, these are some of the developmental things happening. Cracking, naphtha cracker or a gas cracker. Companies like BASF are talking about electrical furnace rather than using this fuel. So, but it's all in developmental stage. We are talking about, when you are going to go for hydrogen economy, steel is not going to support a hydrogen economy. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
With a weight factor, etc., to carry such a small few kilograms of hydrogen, you need tons of steel. So they have to be the fiber, reinforced plastic, fiber reinforced plastic. And that is where I think high pressure hydrogen, if you want to handle, transport, etc., I feel that carbon fiber will come into play. And this is one area today we have been also struggling to get technology. We haven't been, but we are. We will have. And so carbon fiber is a good product to make, great potential, and will be as a tandem to the hydrogen economy. And on the petrochemical side, otherwise, I would say so far they have been all fairly conventional. All of that we are going to make is, as I said, if they are going to convert all the vehicles, in phases to EVs, naturally, we are refiners. So gasoline and diesel, we will have to be prepared to reduce our output and instead convert them into petrochemicals.
Got it. Got it.
And one other thing I would say, this is an important thing. This is a technology issue. See, we are producing so much of carbon dioxide. If you put it into the atmosphere, you can't harness it. We have to avoid it. Can we reverse it? And from carbon dioxide, can you make syngas? That's a technology which is actually process-wise, it is a simple chemistry, but it involves, as I mentioned to you, the recovery of capturing the carbon dioxide, sequestering, and then the usage of carbon dioxide. Once we make the syngas, then we have a the building block, you make CO1 chemicals, full chain.
Got it. Super. Thanks a lot, Mr. Narayan. Moving to Mr. Jaina and Mr. Manoj, your view, especially from your organization's point of view, how are you thinking about sustainability, net zero, and circularity? You can take 1 minute each and describe some of the initiatives and steps in this area. Mr. Jaina, first over to you.
See, the leading Indian petrochemical companies are mainly looking into 4 areas when they conceive any project, particularly petrochemical project. One is direct carbon capture and conversion to petrochemical products. Second one is technology selection and optimizing operations. Third one is energy sourcing and sustainable design of new petrochemical complexes. And fourth one is circular economy, that is recycling and reuse. I am not going to talk about third and fourth point, but the first point, just let me briefly touch upon this direct carbon capture, which Mr. Narayan very beautifully explained. Companies are trying to capture emitted CO2 and they're trying to convert it into valuable petrochemical products. For example, some companies are looking into or have already gone for petcoke gasification projects, which aims to enable the refinery to produce high value petrochemical products and clean fuels like hydrogen also. See, companies are also planning to have CO2 recovery unit to produce food grade CO2 from their proposed ethylene oxide, monoethylene glycol units of polyol project. I'm talking about our company. I'm not going to name any company here, but all these are aimed at reducing the carbon footprint. Also, other major petrochemical companies in India are trying to direct CO2 capture and convert it into valuable petrochemical products. So all these are there in thought process. Another strong point which very strongly comes for consideration is technology selection. Stronger policies in place to meet the Paris Agreement. Indian petrochemical players are now more leaned towards environment friendly and lesser carbon emitting technologies for their projects, all their projects. So that is mainly because see, lesser carbon emission technologies are evolving very fast for some petrochemical products and especially exploring biomass feed for petrochemicals. And people are also considering carbon storage capacity, low cost, zero carbon electricity, and also green hydrogen. So the cost of product is directly attributable to fuels and energy required. Hence, energy saved means margin improved. Therefore, petrochemical industries themselves are already responding to the need for funding decarbonization initiatives, as well as investments to pilot all these new technologies. Yeah, that is what I could say here.
Thank you, Mr. Jena. Mr. Manoj, over to you, your views.
Yeah, so as Mr. Narayan, in his opening remarks said that it is, not an option, net zero and circularity, it is a necessity. So we also see it as a very important part of our daily operations and future planning. Last year, roughly, we saved up to around 3.17 million metric tons of carbon dioxide by adopting various steps. I'll just tell you a few important steps, what we have adopted. One is that we are replacing the conventional fuels at our refineries with natural gas. 3 of our refineries at Mathura, Panipat, and Baroda, this activity has already been completed. We have, taken very specific integrated, energy efficiency projects in our refinery and petrochemical complexes, as well as marketing locations. We have also promoted the use of low carbon transportation modes like pipelines over railways. And there is a very, enhanced focus on the addition of renewable energy portfolio. And this is a, continuous activity. And till date, we have around 233 megawatts of, renewable energy portfolio with us. We are, of course, trying to offset emissions through tree plantations. In carbon capture and utilization storage, we have undertaken feasibility studies for large-scale carbon capture at our Baroda refinery, whereby this refinery stack emissions would be transported to oil-producing fields of ONGC for enhanced oil recovery. We have also undertaken various projects and initiatives to offer clean fuels and lubricants. Additionally, we are also spearheading the development of hydrogen in the country. Last year, we set up a pilot 4 tons per day compact reformer-based CNG production plant in collaboration with Delhi Transport Department. Over 50 cluster buses have been embarked by the Transport Department for holding the demonstration trials, and the trials are currently going on. We are also working significantly in the area of bio-waste to energy in products like bioethanol, biodiesel from used cooking oil, as well as compressed biogas. On the plastic circularity side, we are working on the model of recyclates marketing, as well as our R&D setup is working on technology of valorization of certain plastic wastes and extracting useful monomers from that. As my previous panelist also mentioned about the CO2 capture, that project already we have undertaken at Panipat Refinery, whereby the CO2 could be captured from our glycol plants and converted into a useful product of methanol. So in a nutshell, we are working on various mitigation and product innovation measures to reduce the carbon emission and enhance the supply.
Thank you, Mr. Manoj. I mean, I'm glad for the correction, Mr. Narayan, that it's not can we have to get there.
Thank you. We're talking. No, see, your question, you're absolutely right. The one is, all the companies who are aware of the menace of this carbon dioxide emission, they're all working on in some small scale or medium scale to capture whatever they can and utilize it, convert it, etc. But we have a much bigger problem. That is, most of the carbon dioxide emission is coming from the power generation.
Yeah,
I think almost 70-80% of the CO2 emission is from there. And that is where if you can reduce the use of the fossil-based power and replace it with green power, green hydrogen, fuel cell, etc. When I say green hydrogen means is absolutely green, no? Because power used to generate hydrogen has to be solar.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Quickly, I think we have about five minutes left. We'll leave last 5 minutes for any audience questions. Switching gears, talking about regulation, I'll go to Ms. Banerjee, to you, and then to Saugata ji. 1 minute each. Your view on policy when it comes to enabler for petrochemical industry. What has been missed and what can be done? 1 minute each. Thank you, please.
Thank you. So this PCPR policy, we have already seen that only one area we are having some, we have got some progress, but other 3 areas we have failed. So in my thinking, I think the limited access to advanced technology, this ROI is explosive, the logistic infrastructure challenges are there, Then absence of utilities, land acquisition is very high, and the regulatory issues and planning, limited planning and focus, lack of facility, feedstock for downstream. That is the most important. Already our previous speaker, he has already mentioned that one. And main is absent infrastructure for the green chemicals. That is my idea. But what we can do it, we can bring down these land requirements. Nowadays it is at 250 square kilometers, so it can come down to lesser to that, maybe 100, maybe 50. And this cracker technology or cracker project, standalone cracker we require completely. And you know that infrastructure and this logistic, if you can get the more cracker project and other things in the near the seaport, it will be easier. And another thing is there that what is very important, that is your, you can say that single window first track clearance, and this policy stability. The policy should be stable for 20 to 25 years. Then we can progress our job. And skill development, that is already I have covered earlier. And says on import, and you know that evaluation of the impact of this our free trade agreements and the tariff rationalization, because in other countries there are more, they are open than India, what we are having. And already I told that the logistic infrastructure pipeline network is required. Then that, you know, the viable our PPP model, it is also required, and feedstock strategy along the value chain. Those things are very much important. And wastewater treatment, that is also another problem. What we will have to do it very judiciously, because we are not, India, it is very difficult. We are not taking care of this downside problem, downside things, because we are only concerned about the product and other things. But what will be our wastewater? What we can give a very bad impact on the environment.
Got it. Understood.
All the, and that was the main thing. So if you can develop all these, all the problems, as well as, you know, that capacity utilization, that is main point. What I have seen that major petrochemicals maximum 80% to 87%. So if you want to increase your production, if you want to increase the revenue, then you'll have to go, if it is not 100%, maybe the 95, 98%. And also the setting up the world scale plants, what we will have to do it. And your custom duty structure also we'll have to find out. So
sure.
These are the things most within this short period, I can tell you all those things.
Got it.
Thank you.
Mr. Saugata, maybe your
very briefly, I would like to mention, I mean, for me, the PCPIR clearly, I mean, it is gaining momentum amid some challenges like, you know, environmental impact assessments and some others. But as I interact with the ministries, so I firmly believe that with the impetus coming from the government in terms of providing viability gap funding, you know, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. You know, what I said is that the impetus coming from the government in terms of providing viability gap funding, helping in public-private partnerships, etc., PCPIR will certainly gain its tailwind. Also, several groundworks are being done to form new PCPIR, having clear roadmap with more pragmatic approach. So that's briefly I would like to, you know, add to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Saugata. Praveen, if you have visibility to audience question, maybe we can take a couple of them.
I've already WhatsApp you. You can have a look and
not able to see it. Maybe you will have to take it.
So let me then take them.
So the one point is, you know, on the circular economy side, as an opportunity, today in the country we are about, you know, at the level of 10% recycling business. I think that is one area we have a potential to go up to 50 to 60% easily, because the cost of recycling in India is much lower than that's experienced by the Western countries. And you know, that's what we see, and it's particularly in the PET sector. PET bottles recycled back into the fiber fill products by mainly mechanical recycling, not so much on chemical recycling.
Got it.
Yeah, I thought I would mention that because that's one opportunity for people who are investing, small scale and medium scale people.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Nair. Praveen, over to you.
Yeah.
And leave me a couple of minutes at the end. I'll summarize the discussion.
Okay. So there is a question from Mr. Sadanand Bhavani Shankar from Iliad Group. Dow is building a net zero ethylene and derivatives complex in Alberta startup by 2027. Are there any such plans in India by any of the majors? That's one. And then there is a question from Janeshwar Hegde from Vasf India. Why Indian companies like Reliance lack in developing technology like Western company? Is it due to lack of ecosystem for technology development jointly by university and industry? So over to Sudeep.
Yeah, so maybe I guess last question is directly to you, Mr. Narayan. So
Okay, I can say that. So if somebody has an impression that we are not doing, we have a very elaborate R&D and it is not published. Is there no publicity of what we are doing? We have developed a lot of new niche products in a polyester field because that is where we have the leadership. We are working heavily on also on the polymer side and some of the areas where algae to oil technology we're working on, and we are working on multi-zone cracking technology, in place of conventional FCC or RFCC to make, as I mentioned to you earlier, the refinery today makes about 12 to 15% of petrochemicals, but we are talking about increasing it to 30%. So it's in that direction. So as far as the technology development is concerned, maybe the impetus, because traditionally all these Dow or Shell or BP and they have been in the basic research and with a lot of support from the universities in these countries very actively, and there are endowment there, and then there are a lot of contributions and investment opportunities for interested parties. So if we have to do that, it's not that Dow or Shell is doing on its own. There are a lot of people who are investing in those technologies, putting their, they're betting on it. And in the process, it's just like pharmaceutical. The technology development is going on for 10 years and they come up with a product and with the hope that they'll recover it in 1 year before it becomes a standard copied medicine. So it's in our case, it's we are doing it all by ourselves currently with very little collaboration with some startups and companies, but which is not published. That's the only difference.
All right. On the first question, anyone, I mean, not sure who to direct to, but any plans of net zero cracker like the one Dow has announced in their Canada? Any views, Mr. Jaina, Saugata, anyone?
If you are asking for BPCL, yes, as of now, we have nothing in plan as far as crackers are concerned. But definitely, we have a serious plan. At the right time and right opportunity, we will come to the public and announce it.
Got it. I think Praveen, we are at top of the hour, so
So you can do the concluding remarks, Sudeep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, my fellow panelists, for taking out time and providing your views on some of the pertinent questions. I'll just quickly summarize the discussion. I think clearly view is, I mean, pandemic, COVID is past us. I mean, we have already, as far as petrochemicals go, close to the demand we had pre-pandemic, and domestic outlook looks very, very robust. I think a lot of things are changing. Mr. Narayan mentioned that especially the next 10 years of growth will look very, very different. We'll have a lot more new derivatives that will start getting produced in India. We'll have, some of the technology JVs we see already more amenability to that. So we'll have more partnerships in place. We are seeing a lot of MNCs, variety of reasons mentioned, ranging from stable trade scenario to skilled manpower to local demand to improving infrastructure. So all that is positive. Very good discussion on net zero. I think 2-3 takeaways for me. The direct carbon capture will be one of the very important themes, and technologies are developing there as we speak. Second is around decarbonizing the power, switching to renewable hydrogen or similar sorts, and the circularity and the recycling. As far as the government support goes, I think we do need to make PCPIRs happen. We have not been able to do so, but I'm hoping that I understand there's a draft policy in works, and we can take the right steps around the land acquisition and the infrastructure around that. So with that, let me conclude. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you, audience, for joining in. Praveen, back to you.
One point, may I? As a concluding thing, one
Sure.
positive note of pandemic that we saw is the carbon dioxide emission during the last year was a shade lower than the previous year. Otherwise, year on year, it is always increasing. I didn't mean that we should
That's
have
the positive side of looking at the pandemic.
positive
But
side. Yeah.
Sir, just wanted to conclude from my side is this time there was more rains in India. So was it because of less carbon dioxide?
It is.
Or-
I did tell you that if you go on puking like this, CO2 into the atmosphere, you will have more rain, unscheduled rain, more chillier winter, hotter summer, hurricanes, floods, forest fires, all of them.
So with this note, let me thank my moderator, Sudeep Maheshwari, for doing an excellent job, getting the best from our speakers. Ms. Sanchita Banerjee, ED Special Projects Oil India Limited, Mr. B. Narayan, Group President, Reliance Industries Limited, Mr. Subik Jena, ED INC, Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited, Mr. Saugata Chaudhary, Head Petrochemicals Marketing, Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited, and Mr. Manoj Jha, GM Petchem Strategy, Indian Oil Corporation Limited. I would like to thank all of them from Indian Chemical News for what we can say, giving deep insights into the petrochemical sector and what's going to happen in future. Many thanks, sir, and a big clap to all our speakers as well as the moderator. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Praveen.
Thank you very much.